Is my mic working now? It should be working now. My webcam was also trying to capture audio because I guess it really wants to be included. Who knows? So hello. It's Friday. It's almost the weekend. The mic is working. That's true. This is work because trying to be a creative in the 2020s is a very strange melange of monetizing your passions, but that's a different conversation. Let's not get into it. Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good morning, whatever time it may be as you're watching. I had a great recording last night for Speculate, which may or may not have involved some of the people in this chat. And so while that meant that I got to bed late, I did wake up quite energized, and that makes me feel good. I was pondering whether we should do a game stream today, playing like Remnant 2, which I've been playing offline. The thing is, I think Remnant 2 might require enough computing power that it won't stream well for me, because I remember when I did Remnant from the Ashes on Sunday for Speculate, going to twitch.tv/arvaneleron, where Valerie was on cams and audio chatting with me, and then Brandon joined us later. I was getting some kind of geeker from the computer and the stream, and Remnant 2 is, several years later and a bit more robust of a game, and I don't know for sure that converts to will run better on stream. I know that I've definitely seen skips and herky jerk when transitioning between game engine and cutscenes, and so I was already interested in taking a more thorough look at Heroes by Hearthlight, which I had downloaded a couple of days ago and poked at a little bit, went, interesting. So this will be a more thorough look at the game. I have spent probably 10 or 15 minutes looking at the game previously, but I haven't really looked at any of the GMing section or a lot of the crew sheet equivalent for this game, because this is a Forge in the Dark game, as we can see right down here. And I also learned that this game started as a gag, as I am told, that someone made to poke fun at a friend, because it is taking a lot of the elements that are most popularized or most well known in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition and bringing them into Forge in the Dark. And anyone who watches me do tabletop games knows that I'm a big fan of Forge in the Dark as a design style. And the idea that this started as a bit and then it became a good enough thing that people are excited to keep working on it is very interesting and amusing to me. So we're going to take a look at that. Before we get into anything else, just a quick reminder of me for anyone who might be watching later on, or secret lurkers. I'm a science fiction and fantasy author. I mostly work in action-adventure kinds of stuff. I write epic fantasy, urban fantasy, space opera, and a variety of other things. And you can go to my website at michaelrunderwood.com and check out the stuff that I do. Today we're going to be looking at Heroes by Hearthlight by Mitch Schiwal. I apologize to Mitch if I butchered your name. I did my best. If you know the way that should be pronounced, please let me know, and I will do better. So, what is this? Heroes by Hearthlight is a game about a party of adventurers seeking wealth and wonder in dangerous places. Just as important as their adventures is the home they return to and the choices they make as part of their community. Interesting. Anyone can pick up a blade and call themselves an adventurer, but do your characters have what it takes to truly be called a hero? Okay, interesting things happening immediately, right? I know that this game is in conversation with Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition and in conversation with Dungeons & Dragons as the genre around the game, in that there are games like Pathfinder or Dungeon Crawl Classics or Dragonbane and things like that that are in the same generic space, more or less, using different systems. Heroes by Hearthlight puts down a couple of markers right away. This is about adventurers and the home they return to and the community that they're part of. So this is not entirely about being a wandering band of professional killers who just kind of set their packs down wherever they care to be and just breeze through places never to return with no connections to anyone. They are doing all of this as part of their relationship to a community. And it's differentiating between adventurer and hero. And that an adventurer doesn't have the accountability, maybe doesn't act on behalf of some community, might be a way that we read this. So that's encouraging. There's certainly been criticisms of some fantasy games in the D&D model for kind of uncritically replicating like a colonialist mindset, whether that is in the world building or in the way that the characters approach the space and things like that. And it'll be interesting to see in what ways this game is grappling with any of that, and where it does and doesn't choose to challenge existing assumptions. I remember from my first read through that there's a tab about like race and species that says, I'm not going to try and disentangle the messiness of the way that fantasy species are racialized. Like, that's my recollection of what the designer said for this. I think that there's things that we can do with that may be able to reduce harm, and then we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to that section of the book. This is 123 pages. I don't think I'm going to go page by page. There's a big chunk that's just like, this is the SRD for Forged in the Dark games. I'm going to skip over all of that because the places where it diverges from that SRD are going to be more interesting to me for this stream than reading whether this designer has rewritten some of the elements of the SRD in kind of into another vernacular or in the author's own words. The Kids Are Asleep says, read a great essay that I think Iori shared about games that intrinsically push violence as a plot engine, more or less. Yeah, like I've definitely seen the argument that games that foreground or really only give your characters verbs within like a tool set of violence, and that games that focus only on that replicate kind of a colonialist mindset where everything beyond your home is something to be conquered and exploited and utilized and profited off of, right? If all of your ways of interacting with the space are take thing, claim thing, kill thing, that can be a big problem. So back to the text here. The realm. The players will work together to create their realm, but certain details will be true at any tale. This is a fantastical world of magic and monsters. Check. Ruins of long dead civilizations emerge from the ground like festering splinters. Interesting. That is different, right? Because long dead civilizations, not sure what these civilizations are necessarily meant to represent. What like Earth cultures are they drawing on in terms of like appropriation or cultural resonance? Hard to say. Other worlds exist just beyond sight, past an all-too-permeable veil. Lying at the center is a town, your home. Danger and mystery threaten it from within as well as without. Okay, so this seems like it's presenting the heroes as defenders of a community that is under varying threat from a variety of places. So there's a way in which this can be less colonialist in that it's about protecting an existing community instead of conquering places and claiming them for yourself. Yeah, like it seems like the realm, or maybe the town, is the replacement for the lair, and the realm is the replacement for the crew, maybe, depending on what is dialed in to what degree. But the thing that I have flagged to myself to be on the lookout for is like a sense of I guess like MAGA bullshit, where like to what degree, and are there places where the heroes in the game are figured as the champions and defenders of the right and proper good people, civilization, keep the realm, right? Keep America American, America first, that type of rhetoric. That might be the failure mode that this game could be pushed to, as opposed to the kind of more classical colonialist mode that other games in this genre have been criticized for. But it's still all very early. We know that the world is dangerous and beautiful, the world is comforting and strange, and beyond that, this world is yours to create. So we're being encouraged to do a lot of world building. We got players. Yep, that's normal stuff. Player, character. We have our classes. These are mostly but not identical to the most recent edition of Dungeons and Dragons. All right, we have berserkers instead of barbarians. I think that's a reasonable change in wording. And then everything else is basically the same. Warlock says vile occultists is a little bit more strongly worded than I might see otherwise. So we have the settlement. So it's the heart of both realm and campaign. The players start out with a base to call home. The town has 4 districts. Each district is overseen by a leader, an influential and powerful figure. So the commander protects the people and their order from the citadel, like not from protecting them against the citadel, protecting them from the location of the citadel. That is where they do the protecting from. The elder supports the people in their traditions in the temple. The sage guides the people in their enrichment from the tower, and the crime lord indulges the people in their vices from the den. 4 regions surround the town, each full of dangerous foes and exciting roads to travel. They are also homes to factions that want to see your home destroyed. Every region is host to an enemy faction ruled by an overlord. So we're going to have, I guess, 4 overlords, right? 4 regions, each has an overlord. Overlords are powerful villains who will continue to amass strength and whose plots most certainly mean your doom. Here are the types of overlord: conquerors, behemoths, heretics, tricksters, maestros, and demagogues. So we've got phases of play, adventuring and downtime. Engagement and upkeep happen in here, and then you can always come in and out of free play. So I'm going to zip over that real quick. Core system. So this is just Forge in the Dark stuff. I'm going to scroll here. All right, I'm going to look at resistance and armor because I think it's a little different here. Okay, attributes. We have fortitude, reflex, and willpower, which is... that's like the defenses, or the saves in 3rd edition, and then the defenses in 4th edition. Fortitude, reflex, and will are also the saves in Pathfinder 1st and 2nd edition, if I remember correctly. Resistance reduces severity. Armor. Okay. Something I noticed about this is that harm levels go way higher in this game. I saw a reference to level 7 harm. Protection and immunity. There are foes who are resistant against certain approaches. A paladin might be able to see through your lies. An elemental might be unharmed by your flames. An iron construct. They should use construct here. Yeah, I think there will still be a lot of fighting in this game. An iron construct can shrug off your rapier. This is where a foe's protections and immunities come into play. When an enemy has protection against an approach, the player rolling removes the highest die from their rolled pool. when an enemy has immunity to an approach, the player removes the highest 2 dice from the pool. So if I'm attacking something that has immunity to my weapon, I can still make an impact, but it's going to be incredibly hard. In a Forged in the Dark game, losing 1 die is a pretty big deal. Losing 2 dice is a huge deal, especially because you're losing the highest die after you roll. This is not a -1d penalty. This is, if you roll 3 dice and you get 4, 5, 6, that 6 goes away and now you only have the 5 or the 4, but they're the same result. So we have damage types: crushing, slashing, thrusting. Elemental damage types: burning, corrosive, freezing, shocking. Magic is a damage type. Power. So this is a special ability meter that I noticed the last time I looked at it. The way this is explained was a little confusing to me initially. So you have a power rating, which is equal to, which then is the maximum of your power meter. So if you have a power rating of 1, you can tick power 1 time before you have to rest, or before you have to do something else to reset it, right? Your power clock is reset to 0 after downtime. You can regain power during the respite phase, which we'll look into respite and quiet. Monks regain ki. So if I were going to run this, I might go ahead and change that language to spirit, which is what D&D 5th edition is doing right now, or at least proposed in their latest playtest. Powers effect in the fiction. Yeah, that's fine. Fortune roll. Let's keep zipping along. Gather info. Okay, coin looks pretty similar. Spend coin when you advance your party's level, which might be equivalent to tier. Okay. Wealth level. Retiring. Faction game. Okay, so XP. Looks like settlements get XP. Quality level, that's fine. Factions are ranked by tier. Your party starts at tier 0. The tier of the settlement starts at 1 and will raise with the adventurers when they surpass it. Okay, so settlement starts at 1, heroes start at 0. Heroes get to 1, settlement stays. Hero gets to 2, settlement comes with them to tier 2. So your settlements are going to stay at tier 1 for a while, in all likelihood. Villainous factions. So for most part, the party will be dealing with 5 factions opposing them. One will be your adversary, a leader from the settlement who opposes the party's actions. So that's an internal adversary, right? Within the settlement. Whether they are fully villainous or simply antagonistic is a choice for the group to make. And then the other 4 factions are made up the forces of the overlords. Overlords are powerful beings who have managed to secure a foothold in the region and have servants to their cause. So each of these factions is going to have a clock as they're working on stuff. These are 4-step clocks that must be filled to increase a faction's tier. Once the faction has filled their faction clock a number of times equal to the next tier, they advance to that tier. So all of these factions are constantly moving toward getting bigger and more powerful. Each faction will also have a plot they're trying to achieve with their clocks. These can vary from attacking other overlords. Okay, so filling the clocks raises their tier, but filling the clocks also achieves things along the way. These are all XX yet, but that's fine. So ire, I think, is the equivalent of heat. Heroes' antics do not go unnoticed by their foes, and ire is a measure of their fury. So this is about the enemy faction's level of anger at the heroes. You can lie low or lay low to reduce ire. Every faction has an ire clock. And so instead of one overall ire clock, you have ire with individual factions. Sieges. So when a faction reaches -3 they will lay siege to the settlement, which is like being at war in Blades in the Dark. Setting development. So this is like the claims map, right? So you have your base. We've got academic things over here. We've got some resources over here. Yeah, Ire is like heat. So are these look somewhat but not entirely like they are divided by the local leaders. From your base of operations, the party can make connections. These are drawn along the roadmap from the base or any other connection. When you connect to a new location, the party creates an NPC who works or frequents that location as a contact. Okay. So this is the roadmap. So when you connect to the broker, you probably detail the broker, or you would detail like a regular at the gambling hall, or you would detail the fortune teller, or the librarian, or the kind of quartermaster at the barracks and things like that. So we are going to add NPCs throughout our settlement. You start the game with 1 connection and can gain 2 connections when the party advances. So you get to pick one of these to begin with, right? From the base, we can only go 1 spot. Barracks, library, fortune teller, or broker. We also see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like this isn't the order that is given. So barracks doesn't have the 1, but it does have a box. That's curious. This is a like work in progress game, so some of the things that I identify may not be anything more than the designer hasn't gotten to them or hasn't settled on it yet. So no worries. If the party becomes connected with every building in a location, they unlock a special bonus, which doubles the effectiveness of training. So if you have this whole area, your will training gets double the effect. Support abilities, right? Each location has a support cost. So that's this number, right? So the support cost for the den is 5. By spending twice that value in coin, the party gains access to its ability. However, okay, so each location has a unique ability, but you won't acquire it when you first connect. You still need to invest. So if I decide that that our group is going to start with a connection to the broker, we would then need to spend 2 coin to get access to the broker's ability, which says +1D to acquire assets. This is the investing in the community thing, right? We go out, we do fighting, we get coin somehow, we'll get into that. We come back, we invest that money into the community, our connections and support in the settlement grows when we do that. Each section has location overseen by the settlement's leaders. These are marked with a star, and beyond the support cost, the leader will also task the party with a quest that must be completed before they gain powerful support abilities. And you must be connected to a location to get the support ability. So when we connect to the Citadel, we're going to have to do a special mission and invest that coin, but then it unlocks +1 trauma box, or +1 magic item slot, or +1D to resistance rolls, or +2 stress slots. So those are all very powerful, right? And that's why there's extra requirements to be able to unlock them. Okay, so we have a group called the Deadly Daggers, and they don't have a base, they have a hideout. They connect to the broker, and then connect to the gambling hall. They're going to spend 4 coin to support the gambling hall because it's 2 down here, and then they would have the chance to gain coin during downtime. Advancement, so you advance when you make a desperate roll, and when you roll in a group action that's desperate, you also mark XP. Sure, that's good clarification. You have XP triggers, that's all the same. Party advancement, party XP trigger, contend with challenges above your station, bolster your party's reputation or develop a new one, goals, drives, inner conflict, or essential nature. Great. When you fill your party tracker, take a special ability, mark 2 connections, or increase the party's tier by spending the necessary coin equal to 4 times the new tier. So rather than needing a certain amount of rep and then spending coin, you actually need an advancement, and then you can spend coin to go up a level. Well, party's tier. So tier might not be the same as level. Let me take that back. Okay. Playbooks. Bards, berserkers, clerics, druids, fighters, monks, paladins, rangers, rogues, sorcerers, warlocks, wizards. Heritage. So when you make a character, select a heritage and choose 2 traits from its list. Heritages are based on fantasy archetypes, but are left intentionally bare. So this reminds me of Band of Blades, where there are 4 heritage abilities or bonuses per heritage that are referenced in the game, and you get to pick 2 of them. So some of these are more or less biologically essentialist seeming. Okay, so here's a bit that I was talking about it. Yeah. Tabletop RPGs have failed portraying quote-unquote race in their worlds. They have lacked nuance, care, or empathy. The classical fantasy races have calcified into a collection of nostalgia, character, and harmful stereotypes, the book says. I'm not going to try to fix that. Should the author have tried to fix it? To be argued. So, probably, here's the alternate rules, right? Write down your heritage and place 2 action dots to represent culture, values, and training. So we can do that. These benefits are not just to action ratings, like some of them are. Some of them are other specifications. I think that it would not be too hard to say, pick your character's heritage, describe it how you like, and then take 2 like background bonuses. You know, were you raised in a culture where people wore armor all the time, and so armor costs 1 load less? Were you raised in a martial culture and trained to be able to operate as a warrior even when you're hurt? And so we would then frame these as elements and abilities that are culturally supported and culturally taught. People are taught how to deal with pain. People are taught how to wear armor more readily. People are taught illusion spells. Yeah. So make 1 long list and let people justify from that. Kids Are Asleep says. I think that's a very solid approach. History is about what they did before becoming an adventurer. So we've got a variety of options here. You pick a category and then write a detail. So you could be criminal, ex-pirate captain, outcast, wrongly accused and exiled. So we have artist, criminal, laborer, outcast, privileged, soldier, scholar, trade, weird. Playbook gives you 3 action dots. You assign 4 more action dots. So I guess this means that rules as written, you would get 3 from playbook, 4 from extras, and then you'd get your 2 heritage bonuses. I'll want to see if there's an example character sheet to just be able to double check that, because if you use the alternate rules, you would have 3 from playbook, 2 from heritage, and 4 here, which is more than starting Blade's characters get, but that's not necessarily a problem. Contacts look similar. Vice, faith, luxury, commitment. So commitment instead of obligation. Oddity, pleasure, solitude, thrills. I think those are decent approaches for adventurers / heroes vices. Okay, review your details. This is all the overview. here are our actions. Bluff, charm, craft, intimidate, lore, perception, stealth, strike, survival, thievery, and volley. So these are also a bit more combat oriented than I've seen in some Forged games. Like volley is specifically about combat, as is strike. We do have, an athletics, but it wasn't bolded. Work in progress. Bluff, charm, and intimidate. So we have charm is kind of equivalent to sway, intimidate is more like command, and bluff is not really like consort. So that is a bit different. So interesting. So if I'm a paladin and I'm trying to lead soldiers in battle, what am I rolling? Am I rolling charm? Because I don't want to intimidate people. Command in Blades had a bit of that versatility, right? Because you can command in a way that you're not trying to be intimidating, or you can command and be intimidating. Theoretically, you might be able to use charm to lead people in battle. Yeah, you might command others to obey, but intimidate might be better. You could navigate a charged situation. There's always going to be some edge cases and things like this. All right, now we're into playbooks. I don't know that I want to read through every playbook fully, but I'm going to look at a couple of them, and then I think I want to jump down to like the campaign level and talk about some of that stuff, because my plan is to only go for about an hour to an hour and a half today. Bard, one of my favorite classes. The first class I played in 5e to any great length. So craft, I'm guessing, would also be like my performance ability in some cases, unless I were then using sway or something else. So remember, we have the power meter. Every class has a base power that you spend your basically power points to be able to use. So Inspire will let you re-roll a die. You can use this on allies' rolls provided you are present and able to be perceived, so you can help somebody else out. This is after a die has been rolled. You cannot re-roll a die that has been removed by resistance or immunity. But a re-rolled die will not be affected by either. So something that's been removed by resistance or immunity is out of play entirely, but you're not going to then lose another one when you do Inspire here. And some special abilities. So once per session, you may roll an action's relevant resistance rather than its score. So you could roll reflex for a volley check. If you are well-rounded versus being a specialist, jack of all trades, you can get a special bonus and excel because of your versatility. Bardic Knowledge, you always have potency when gathering information. So some of these are more or less directly analogous to something from D&D 5e, which seems to be the closest touchstone here. But we also have not the face. You can spend advantage to have the GM change harm to a different consequence. This only applies to you. So if you're going to get shot by, or maybe not shot, if you're going to get shot by a crossbow from like a town guard, you could say, not the face. And instead of taking harm, something else happens. And that's pretty funny because this feels like it feeds on or builds on the reputation of the bard as like, I'm a lover, not a fighter. And that vibe. That's pretty fun. We'll have to figure out how you get advantage so that I can understand how frequently you're going to be able to use that ability. You can spend Inspire to break someone from mystic control or temporarily disrupt an ongoing magic effect. Fantastic. All right, this is like counter charm in D&D. And you can do Charm Person. Barred items, fine instrument, fine clothes and accessories, well-traveled garments, a fine bottle of alcohol, a hidden knife, elegy for yesterday, a sorrow-filled performance that reduces others to tears. Love a good elegy. Okay, so the elegy does take load, but a memento doesn't. Because for me, an elegy for yesterday this is intangible load, but then it takes a load slot. Interesting. My heart is like a burning fire berserker. I don't think that's either the words or the tone, but that's the vibe. So you can spend rage to increase your scale for a roll, so you get to fight as a group. And this bonus continues until you roll without pushing yourself. So as long as you keep pushing yourself, you can maintain rage. And that's kind of fun as a way of translating how rage works in 5e and the D20 games. No time to bleed. And so this is a familiar Forged in Dark ability. What is best in life? When you charge directly toward foes that outnumber or tower over you, clear 1 stress and take +1d to athletics. Fantastic. And this is from Conan the Barbarian, right? What is best in life? To drive your enemy, to crush your enemy, drive them before you, and hear the lamentations of their women. I don't remember the exact line because it's been several years since I watched that film. Dragon Slayer. Bonuses for using heavy weapons. Paint this town red. When you indulge your vice, you can choose to overindulge to clear all stress. Okay. So if you're doing a vice roll and you get like a 2, you could say, no, I'm going to paint the town red. I'm going to overindulge, crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentations of their women. Thank you, the kids are asleep. I was just getting some of the bits worked up. I believe you are correct. Fine heavy weapon. Demon-bound idol. This is like the Rage Essence Vial, I guess. Yeah, it is a bit like that. A lifetime of scars. Your entire history, a map on your skin, grants potency to intimidate when shown. Oh, that's good. Lock and chains. Heavy iron links. Did you used to wear these? That could be interesting, depending on execution. So clerics can just straight up reduce harm, which is pretty great. Destroy undead, seeking a sign, getting information, guidance, which is like the cantrip. Cool. So I'm gonna zip down to when we're done with classes. If you want to see about the other classes, you can pick the game up yourself. Here, which is where I got it. So basic gear. Blade, ranged weapon, heavy weapon, shield. Can improve position in situations where you can block damage. If a piece of gear would be destroyed, you can lose your shield instead. Okay, that's cool. Lantern, artisan's gear, performance bag, bandolier, can carry some of these cool things. It's nice to have that full list there. Health potion allows you to ignore harm's penalty for a single scene. Cannot be used to ignore the penalty of fatal harm. Okay, so that's what we're doing with health potions, at least as a basic element. Poison vial, which you could put on your weapon. Magic oil would give your weapon the magic damage type for 1 hit. If you fail and miss, the tag continues until your next successful hit. That's very nice. You don't use the load and then miss and then feel bad about life. So, spellcasting. Spells are another form of gear. I love this, because it still gives a limitation on magic use. It means that if you are like for paladins and rangers and like with a kind of what in 5e are the half casters, you're not going to be able to use as many spells because you're already using load on armor and weapons. Whereas if you're a wizard, you might have, okay, well, I have 1 load for my staff, I have 1 load for maybe a book, and then the rest of my load is spells. And maybe some of your spells are 0 load. So rotes are simple spells that can be cast over and over again. They take up 0 load but require a rote spell slot. Some playbooks gain a rote spell slot as part of their signature gear and can prepare a rote spell on quests. Let's zip back up to Wizard and see how that works. So, great. Wizard items. A heavy spell allows preparation for more dangerous spells. A fine focus, which gains potency when casting spells. Can prepare a rote spell for every level of load. 1 for light, 2 for normal, 3 for heavy. So a wizard with a heavy load can have 3 rote spells and then like 5 or 6 load of other spells, which is a lot. Heavy spells are... So normal spells and heavy spells are used up when cast, but rote spells are not. Okay, so wizards, warlocks, and sorcerers all gain 1 slot per load level for rotes. So here are some of the rote spells: Missile, ranged attack, Illusion, Flare, Grasp, Fear. 1 load spells: Vault, Shatter, Shrink, Float, Call Lightning, Unknowable Form, Fire Burst. So that's a fireball. Mind Swap. And so the nice thing is here you can add any number of spells, but because this is a Forge in the Dark game, you don't have to get too much into the nitty-gritty. These are all largely fictionally described, right? A creature you can see becomes larger for the rest of the scene, increasing its scale. Shatter. An object you touch is explosively reduced to component parts. Magical Miscellaneous. Some players may be wondering what they're supposed to do without their favorite color swapping, dry cleaning, spark making cantrip. Since it is never given any sort of magical effect, is only for flavor, just treat anyone capable of casting a spell as though they had it. So prestidigitation or other things that are like that would be counted as rotes that don't count against your rote limit, is another way of maybe thinking about that. Who can use magic? Anyone! Some playbooks focus on spellcasting and start out with gear and options that reflect that, but anyone can prepare a level 1 spell. So if you want to be a fighter who utilizes sword and spell, you absolutely can. Your heavy armor might be charged runic tattoos. Perhaps your favorite tactic is casting float and firing arrows between massive leaps. Okay. You can take more spells with some special abilities. You can also get your hands on scrolls, which cost 0 load and can be used to prepare its cast spell once. Once you acquire a scroll, it will fade to uselessness after the next quest, so you gotta use it or lose it. Chapter 3, The Realm. So the game references Dungeon World as a direct inspiration, which I think makes sense here. You know where you're going. Draw maps, leave blanks is a principle that is in Dungeon World. We're going to name our settlement. We have some tables. Love a good table. This gives us what looks like fairly tropey Western European fantasy type names. The purpose of this table is to get the game moving along, as well as to point out how ridiculous English names are. There we go. Frostpool and Hollydale will bring completely different feelings to mind. So this is thinking about the thematic and emotional impact of how we're doing naming. Build a party. You start at tier 0 with 2 coin. You're going to have an initial reputation. I love the idea of vexing. That's big D&D player character group energy, to be just like a group of misfits who's very frustrating to the settlement that they live within. So your base is going to be in a tavern, a shrine, a hideout, a shop, a guild hall, a manor. So each of these types gives one special ability, right? So if you have a hideout, you choose one region, you gain +1d to engagement rolls in that region for the rest of the campaign because you have secret ways of getting around. If you're at a tavern, you can spend coin and a downtime activity to party with everyone, allowing the whole party to make a vice roll. If anyone overindulges, a fight erupts, and everyone gains 1 stress after the vice roll. So this is like the home cooking ability in Scum and Villainy. That's pretty fun. So if you have a shop, you get more load. If you're in a guild hall, everybody gains 1 point in an action rating. Hello, Maldarian. Hail and well met, and other tropey Western heroic fantasy gobbledygook that one might say. Huzzah! I was in the SCA, I'm allowed. Choose a contact. This is a contact. You get this contact without having to invest in the local community. Arrived on Vices. Perfect. So you get this even without the connections to the other establishments in town. And then you place a connection. You can spend your initial coin to immediately gain the upgrade of that location. And you're going to detail the NPC that goes with it. So for your contact, you choose between these, and then you will create the NPC. Sure. Choose an adversary. So this is a big deal. This is the person within the community that doesn't like you, right? Your adversary is one of the leaders of the settlement whose goals or methods do not mesh well with your own. Perhaps you get on their bad side during an adventure, or you actively speak out against their actions. It's possible the party starts out unaware of their adversary's animosity. So you might, your adversary might be the sage, the commander, the elder, or the crime lord. So if you're goody goodies, maybe it's the crime lord. If you're kind of upstarts, maybe it's the elder, because your group is trying to challenge tradition. Maybe the commander is kind of a little bit of a warlord on their own. They serve at the behest of the rich and noble. Okay, right? So this is like, oh, is the commander a cop? More or less. The sage might be a wizard looking for power, or might be like an isolationist, or might kind of demand magic items and other things kind of regardless of the cost. So there's ways to make any of these people villains, and I think you can probably detail any of them in a way that is kind of a critique of the way that your group approaches solving problems, right? The crime lord, while being a criminal, might be really orderly, right? We're the only ones who get to do crime here. We make sure that people don't die. You can make your crime lord kind of more like the reputation of like a mafiosi or something like that. Protection racket and things like that. When you choose an adversary, you will also cross off their building on the settlement map. You will never be able to gain the bonus they offer. Their district will also raise the support cost for buildings in their district by 1. So if the commander is our adversary, it's going to be harder to gain the support from locations in the gold quarter. So these are 1-to-1 with the quarters that I was looking at in the map. I like that. I like that we're getting a lot of tools for detailing the place that the heroes are from, and that we get I get the sense that they are going to do things and coming back to a place that they care about. Earlier this year I played in an Avatar Legends game with some friends offline, and we had a good time. I think it's a cool game, but something we did that became a challenge for us is that we decided to do a traveling game, and that meant that we went to different places and we left behind a lot of NPCs. Some of them we were able to see again because of some elements in the game, like we met some pirates and then those pirates showed up again because they were traveling and we were traveling. What this does is it means that you're always coming back to this settlement and you're developing the player and the character's investment in that settlement. The group comes back, they spend coin to gain support of places in the settlement, they develop new relationships with characters in that settlement, they have their own contacts and things like that, so that the downtime part of the game ideally feels like it carries its weight and is an interesting part, right? I bet there's going to be times in a given campaign where you come home, you do your downtime, and then there's stuff to do in the settlement, and you spend a decent amount of time in free play doing something there. You know, maybe the adversary turns out to actually be the real big bad of your campaign, and the adversary is actually controlling one of the overlords. Or maybe your adversary is a pawn of one of the overlords, right? The sage could be Saruman, who falls under the thrall of the overlord Sauron. I like it. Beyond the settlement. Okay, so now we're getting into regions, right? There are 4 major regions. These will be where you spend your time adventuring, decide what types of terrain you will find in these regions, which will also determine types of foes. Take turns rolling dice or choosing from the following until you've filled your 4 regions. When someone fills it, they should describe the aesthetics and feeling of the place. Paint a realm you will want to adventure in. Make a conversation. This is a collaborative effort. Write down points of interest. So, you know, we could probably fill in a kind of fantasy map-making game here, just keeping some of these ideas in mind, that we want to have the classifications of these regions. So we have coastal, grasslands, ruin, wetland, mountain, forest. So we don't have, I guess desert could be ruin, but we can also just add to these, right? These categories are probably going to be the ones that any monster write-ups include. Generating enemies. When you're with your regions out of the map, it's time to start adding dangers. At the start of a campaign, each region will need 2 types of enemy. They won't be the only foes, but they are the most common threats found there. And you can roll on charts, right? So in a wetland, you might mostly be dealing with undead and slimes. In the grassland, you might be dealing with centaurs and elementals. In the forest, you might be dealing with bandits and trolls. If a player rolls the same result twice, have them roll 2d6 to generate an enemy. This allows for regions to possess foes they wouldn't normally appear here. Beasts, enemies. Okay, I'm not totally sure about that. And these are just beasts here. So we have monsters and beasts, or you might have a giant worm that is kind of more like a monster. Types of undead, faux folio, modifying monsters. This is about making enemies scary. So here we have, what if an owl had a bear's face? The bowl, or bowl. Bowl is maybe tricky because then that's overlords. For every region, roll a descriptor and type for its overlord. Enemies from this region will make up the bulk of the overlord's forces, right? So you might have a vengeful conqueror. Yep, definitely not an owlbear, right? You could have a paranoid magus. Here we have the World Eater. On a 6, the Overlord is the World Eater. May gods have mercy on our souls. All right, maybe there'll be something else about a World Eater later on. Overlord styles. That gives them a special ability, right? An obsessed Overlord gains +1 tick on every faction roll. A cruel Overlord. We're gonna have something about Doom and Advantage that I don't know about yet. Overlord archetypes describes their approach. A beguiler leads through domination and manipulation. A behemoth leads through overwhelming power and terror. And the World Eater is a special type of overlord. They are a sleeping monstrosity whose very existence is calamity. Should they manage to awaken and rise to the surface, the settlement, if not the world itself, will be doomed. It would take truly the greatest of heroes to meet this thing in open combat and walk away victorious. So this is our cosmic horror end boss. So faction tiers. Every faction has their own tier. There are 2 options for setting your foe's initial tier. Balanced, set every tier to faction 1. With effort and fine tools, the party will be able to meet any faction on equal terms. However, they will have to be careful if they focus on wiping out a particular faction at first. They can find themselves being outclassed by factions who have been left to their own devices. Or, every faction starts with a unique starting point. The strongest overlord has tier 2, then the weakest has tier 0, the other 2 have tier 1, right? So that means you might have like, oh, okay, well, we know that the Lich King is bad news, and the Lich King's forces are tier 2. And so we, the adventurers who are tier 0, we're not going to start out fighting the Lich King. We're going to start out by fighting the Bandit Lord, who is tier 0. Something like that. That gives a little bit more of a sense of shape. Balanced would also be good for if you were doing like a West Marches game using Heroes by Hearthlight. Realm creation. This is just an overview. Advancement options. The party can choose to gain a special ability as a reward for filling their XP party tracker. Skill focus, teamwork, Warforged, Ritualist, Leadership. Create a hireling with quality equal to tier +1. This cohort can be any of these types. This is a great ability if you have a contact who wants to join the party on their adventure. Okay, so a cohort could be anything from a torch-bearing hireling to an airship to a baby griffin the party adopted. Baby griffin. The scansion doesn't work to do baby shark here, but baby rock would. Baby rock, do 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 do, and so on. Group chat. You and the rest of the party can permanently communicate with each other as per the message wrote. You can spend 3 stress to teleport to a party member's side. Well, that's pretty nice. Delve deep. This lets you unlock the dungeon, a special region with new threats and great rewards. Hirelings. Experts. Edges and flaws. This is similar to existing games. Magic items. When a PC fills a roll of wealth with 10 coins for the first time, they acquire a magic item. A hero can potentially acquire 5 magic items over their career. 4 are gained by completing wealth levels. Each PC will immediately gain a magic item if the party finishes the support quest for the tower location. So we have kind of existing, or we have write-ups for some magic items here. Enchanted weapons give your magic the weapon tag and one of the elemental damage types. Mystic armor. When you use armor, it negates the harm or consequences rather than resisting. Bag of holding. Mercurial mask. Rune stone. Winged cloak. If I were running this, I would probably write up a bunch more magic items, and I would hand magic items out more frequently, not just tied to wealth, because getting magic items when you're out on adventures, to me, is an important aspect of this type of fantasy adventure game. Districts, right? So we have some write-ups of the special abilities that they give. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. All right. So I may have overlooked Adventure and Doom. Advantage. Okay. That is that. Okay. When an enemy has a big advantage, you'll need to make it as resistance roll. Okay, so that is okay. So here we have some confusing, right? We have advantage fictional, advantage mechanical. Advantage mechanical is in bold. How do you gain advantage? You can spend advantage to gain a bonus die, removing an advantage and moving it over to Doom. So when I spend advantage, the GM gains 1 doom. You can spend advantage as one of the ways of getting bonus dice. You can get up to 3 bonus dice: assist, push, and advantage. Advantage is spent by players, while doom is spent by the GM. Whenever a point is spent from one pool, it's moved to the other, so these go back and forth. When an adventure begins and engagement is rolled, the pools are reset. The doom pool is set to 1 for the GM, and advantage pool is set to the number of other players. So, for example, at a table with 5 people, there will be 1 doom and 4 advantage at the start of an adventure. So that tells us how we generate those initial numbers and where they reset. Players are encouraged to narrate what opportunity they are seizing or creating for themselves when spending advantage. A player can only use 1 point of advantage for their roll, and after it is resolved, that point is moved to doom. When a GM spends doom, they get to inflict consequences as though the players failed a roll. The number of doom being increased. Okay. The GM can spend multiple points of doom at once and then move all points spent to advantage. So, if the heroes have used advantage and then they get to a boss room, and I'm the GM, I can say, I'm going to spend a doom and the content note for spiders, fantasy spiders. The giant spider shoots a big thing of webs and you're all trapped in the webs. That would be a way to use doom. So that lets the GM kind of be more aggressive and put the heroes on the back foot a little bit. But when the GM uses doom, the heroes then gain advantage, which they can use for bonuses. And ideally, this flows back and forth. Advantage is a group resource, not an individual resource. So ideally, that means that it's going to be spent more frequently, and that resource is going to fluctuate back and forth and keep the game dynamic. Because if things are going bad, the GM has used all of their doom, the heroes have all this advantage, but then as the heroes use that advantage, they have to understand that there's going to be a backswing. Now, the problem is, what happens if the heroes are doing pretty well, but don't want to give the GM any doom, and so they just don't use advantage? There's probably some abilities that require spending advantage and things like that. And it's been my experience in Forged in the Dark games that there's just going to be times when a hero or when a character is just in a bad place and they really need another +1. Right? We have devil's bargains here, but you can also spend advantage on top of that. So if you had 0 in an action, you could get +1 from assist, +1 from a devil's bargain, and +1 from advantage, and go from 0 to rolling with 3 dice, which is very good. On 3 dice, you have theoretically an 87% chance of getting at least 1 die to roll 4 or above. Is it 87 or 83? It's in the 80s%. I don't remember exactly. It should be 87, right? Because it's 50% chance, and then a 25% greater chance, and then half of a 25% greater chance with D6s. This is the statistics I know. Okay, and that's the game, right? Because we got to the end of the document. Shifting resources. So if I run this, or if I'm going to pitch this for us to play, I will need to read this SRD section, because there is, in fact, stuff in here that is original to Heroes by Hearthlight. So we're going to go back to the very beginning so I can show off the game's title. All right, this is Heroes by Hearthlight by Mitch Schiwal, or Mitch Schiwal. And this is available on itch.io. Currently, it is a pay-what-you-want game. Name your own price. This game was last updated in February of this year. I don't know when there will be more updates, but I feel like if I found a group that was excited to play this, I could start running this right now. right? I'm very familiar with Forged in the Dark games. I'm familiar with the kind of fantasy adventure D&D genre. And if I had a group who was really interested in that genre, but were more interested in the kind of narrative forward social encounters and combat encounters get the same level of mechanical complexity kind of game, I could come to Heroes by Hearthlight. A lot of people in the conversations about like, what do you want to play if you don't want to play D&D but you want to play something like D&D? For some time, people would recommend Dungeon World. A lot of people are not recommending Dungeon World in the last few years for understandable reasons, because one of the co-designers was revealed to have a pattern of some pretty heinous behavior. And so people didn't want to support him anymore, which is a bummer to his co-writer, who, by my understanding, has not done all of those terrible things that the other writer did. So congratulations, Adam Koebel. You ruined your own career and tarnished the reputation of what otherwise many people regard to be a very good game that you rewrote with Sage Latora. I liked Adam's stuff, but when you do shit like that, consequences. However, I do not believe that I've heard anything about Mitch being terrible, and so we have this fairly light, but I think interestingly built, community-oriented fantasy adventure game. The thing I was hoping for a little bit more of a write-up on, and maybe I was just skimmed over it, is this idea of like stuff springing out of the world to threaten your community, right? Like, did the ruins near your settlement kind of emerge in some kind of like cataclysm event, and they didn't used to be ruins there? Like, oh yeah, 100 years ago there wasn't a giant graveyard like a 3-hour walk outside of our town. So that might be the thing that I would maybe focus on or highlight more if I were going to run a game using this system. You know, figure out like, okay, is this settlement like more isolated? Is this settlement just in the middle of a bunch of terrible stuff? Is the settlement actually like a big city, and there's a reason why it is surrounded by these very dangerous regions? You know, we could have a region that is like, oh yeah, this is the neighboring kingdom, and the threat is that they want to take over the kingdom that our characters live in, and then we can have like a war campaign kind of a thing. Framing of Overlord is fairly flexible, because you can have an Overlord that is like, here is the Bone Queen, who is a lich, and her forces are undead in one region, in like a swamp region with the Bone Queen. And then on another side of the settlement, you could have a rival kingdom, and the Overlord is the king or the general of the army, who has kind of co-opted control of the kingdom. And so we do have some of that flexibility. The scale and scope of Forged in the Dark games is such that I would expect a Heroes by Hearthlight game might not be the game that you would want to run a 150 plus sessions long campaign, because characters in Forged in the Dark games tend to start out quite competent and become really, really skilled, right? When you get to the point where you have every attribute at the maximum rating, so you're really good at resists, you've got 3 and 4 dots in a bunch of different actions, and let's see, do we have a character sheet? I don't know that we have a character sheet for this. Logo design. Anyway, if there isn't a character sheet, then I would figure it out. Just use a character keeper or something like that. That's fine. not a problem. Maybe a little bit less fun, a little bit less shiny if I was going to do an actual play, but not actually a problem, I don't think. So that is that. I'm going to link this again here if folks want to check it out. So yeah, I just saw this a couple days ago. It was recommended on a Discord that I'm on, and I went and took a quick look at it and it seemed interesting. And I'm very glad to have taken a deeper look at it now. I have kind of waved it at some folks that I play with, and I might get to play it at some point in the future. Finding the perfect game for people who would rather not play 5e is an endeavor that a number of people have been interested in and pursued for decades now. So I'm not going to say that any one game is like the perfect thing for playing D&D without playing D&D, because people want different things from that, right? Some people like Pathfinder because it does things that they want and doesn't do things they don't like. Other people go and play OSR games. The thing for me with OSR games is that I have found most of them to be very much focused on dungeon crawling and on like protagonists, or like on characters who are kind of like terrible people, as opposed to the heroic fantasy adventure subsection of the genre, which is more my interest for the most part. And I want something where you can tell fun action stories, but you don't have to do like a tactical battle map. Because even good tactical combat tends to be harder to keep at like a high level of cinematic action adventure storytelling. MCDM is working on a game that they are focusing on making it tactical, cinematic, heroic fantasy, I think, are the four watchwords that they're utilizing, and that could be really interesting. I have gotten a lot out of various videos that Matt Colville has done. I don't always agree with him, but I don't always agree with anybody. So I'm going to be very curious to see what that game looks like once there is then a playtest edition, a playtest document available, which according to their latest videos should probably be sometime this year, if I'm guessing correctly. I could be totally off base. They have been doing rapid, like, iterative design and iterative playtest, which seems like it's let them move through steps of design quite quickly. But Kobold Press is making Tales of the Valiant. Cool Name Goes Here is doing a new fantasy RPG, that being the people behind the Aetaltis 5e fantasy setting. And there's any number of games that are somewhere on that range of Heartbreaker to other form of D&D quote-unquote replacement, right? D&D is pretty much always going to be there. It is very popular. It's enjoyed by a lot of people. But I think TTRPGs are stronger when D&D is not the only option for a heroic fantasy adventure game. And so we have things like Heroes by Hearthlight. We have things like a million other games, right? 13th Age is in that space. Shadow of the Demon Lord. That one is more grimdark, but that publisher has announced a game that seems like it will be not grimdark. Shadow of the Weird Wizard, I think, or something like that. Which is going to be mechanically similar, but not in that kind of grimdark / dark fantasy setting. So I've got my eyes on a few of those, and I hope to be able to play some of them at some point. So that's going to be that for me. I am going to remind everyone that I co-host Speculate, which is an actual play show showcasing science fiction and fantasy authors, editors, and agents, because author is my main thing that I do, as well as being a game designer and actual play producer and professional GM. like I said, many hats to try to put together a living. And we may have monopoly is never a healthy situation, Arudnell says. Exactly. I agree. Part of the whole idea of like markets and like capitalist competition is this idea that when there is competition, everybody has to do better. And I don't know that that always happens, but I would probably rather have 4 or 5 notable companies all trying to do something a bit different to earn people's attention and money, rather than there only ever being one company, right? And D&D is not a monopoly. It's just has the largest share, and that can create some problems for other people trying to get into that space because it's hard to break out. So that is all of that. We may have a Speculate recording this weekend. We still have to figure out the schedule. If we do, that's probably going to be Sunday night. There's a very small chance that it would be tonight, but we will see about that. I will announce it on the Speculate social handles and on my own if and when we're going to have that recording. We did a Speculate recording last night that I'm very proud of and think that everybody did a great job, but that one is the exact plan for it is still TBD. So it will be shown. We might hold on to it and get a few episodes in the can. We might do some other fun special things with it, but I'm very excited to share it with you all at some point. Thank you to everyone who has been hanging out and checking out this game, Heroes by Hearthlight, with me. That being Arudnell and The Kids Are Asleep and Maldarian and QCG Aaron and anybody else who is around. And thank you to the folks who are watching this on the VOD, on Twitch, or on YouTube. You can catch me playing video games, talking about TTRPG design, talking about writing, the business of publishing, unionization. You know, you may see I stand with the WGA bit down there in the corner. And that's me. So yeah, I hope that this has been interesting to you all as I check out this new game in a familiar design style, in a familiar genre. I think it makes actually a pretty solid combination, and I would be curious to do more with it. So that's going to be that. Have a good weekend to everyone who is watching right now and or watching soon enough that it being weekend is an appropriate, well-wishing sentiment. Otherwise, I hope you all have a great day, and I will see you next time. Where is my ending scene? It's right here. Okay, bye.